Don Lemon was fired from CNN yesterday, and he was outraged. Yes, of course, we know Tucker Carlson was also fired from Fox News, but that's not what this channel is going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Don right now. So he tweeted, I was informed this morning that by my agent that I have been terminated by CNN. I am stunned. After 17 years at CNN, I would have thought that someone in management would have had the decency to tell me directly. So that's what he had to say. CNN did push back. CNN said, Don Lemon's statement about this morning's events is inaccurate. He was offered an opportunity to meet with management, but instead released a statement on Twitter. Now we know, again, Tucker Carlson was also fired abruptly on the heels of Fox News and their, fake news election coverage, and claiming that the company, I can't remember the name of the company, but claiming that they rigged the elections. One of the polling tech companies, right, claimed that they rigged the elections. And he was continuing that conspiracy, and he's done so many he's made so many conspiracies, but that's not apparently the reason why Fox News fired him. There's no word on why, and apparently he's actually not fired yet, according to Megyn Kelly. According to Megyn Kelly, he's not fired, but they terminated his show, and they're sort of doing a clause. I guess they're getting him out, right? But they wanted to end it immediately. And his was also abrupt and disrespectful, the way that they did it to him too. When it comes to Don, he has a bad reputation that CNN has been promoting. Apparently since the new CEO came in, they've been trying to kick him out. And so they've been pushing this narrative that he's quite toxic. We know that they canceled him from his primetime show and put him on the morning show. And I'm going to play a clip that went viral a few months ago, when he, disrespected Nikki Haley, who's running for president, or running for office. She had said that Biden is not in his prime, which is a fair statement. He's 80 to be running for president. Mentally, he's not in his prime. A lot of people have made this statement, but to that, Don's response was quite ridiculous. I'm sure you guys remember this. Let me play it.
I think it's the wrong road to go down. She says people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Prime for what?
It depends. I mean, it's just like prime. If you look it up, if you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't necessarily.
40s. Oh, I got another.
I'm not saying
decade.
I agree with that. So I think she has to be careful.
Wow, dig yourself a hole there, son.
What an idiot, honestly. That is not his finest moment. It's really, really dumb thing to say. And that's the thing, like, it's so interesting because there's a divide now. So he upset the white feminists, right? But he upset the feminists generally, and just women generally. It's an obnoxious thing to say, and I'll unpack that. But also there are people, I guess black men, who are, supporting Don and thinking, it was unfair the way he was treated. Look, first of all, let me address that statement and how ridiculous that statement was. So offensive to me. This woman that's younger than you, more tip-top on her toes than you, and you have at your old age, you're telling her that she's not in her prime. Prime for what? And this is the problem, this is him putting her in the context of, childbirth and child rearing, and being, is just this idea that a woman's purpose in life is to please and appease men visually and in all aspects. That's the misogyny that he's pushing, and that's why it's like extremely upsetting, because when you're president, your job as president is not to please a man. You're primed for getting a husband, sure, you could say that. You could, how they love to say in the manosphere, your sexual market value peaks at 25 or whatever. Fine. That's okay. You can say that if that's what men feel. Like, I'm not going to tell him, any man, how he should feel about the woman that he wants to spend his life with, right? And obviously for fertility, you're not in your prime. Yeah, you could say that. right? But she's not. What does being a president have to do with fertility? It's about mental capacity. It's about mental capabilities, right? And as we know that women are more educated than men in America, women, go through schools, are more educated, and becoming more accomplished. We're seeing that the wage gap is closing, not enough. It's like 50% of women make more or the same amount as their spouses. So point is, prime for what? She's in better prime, mental prime, more of a mental state than you are at, 56. So it's quite crazy that he thought he could get away with that. And I completely salute CNN for telling him to take a walk in that period, right? To take a break and think about what you said. Now, there was a hit piece that came out about, I want to say like a couple weeks ago, and it was just like listing all the terrible things that he had done in the past, like in the time period that he had been working at CNN, and they were positioning it like he's this awful human being, and it was almost like we could see it coming. They're building the case, but they're not just building it; they're building it in the court of public opinion. So the rest of the media, you can see the rest of the media, are ready to bash him. And here's where CNN was so genius about this strategy, because they knew they were going to fire him, right? They knew that, but they wanted to wait for the right time. And it's so funny how they wait for Tucker Carlson to get fired. And that's why I'm not going to talk about Tucker in this video as much. I'm talking about, because they thought they could distract this conversation that we're having now with the Black community outrage. This is exactly why. Oh my God, this is why Democrats or the liberals, and I'm not necessarily, I'm in the middle, I'm an independent, right? But this is why liberals are just as racist, just as white supremacist as the right. At least the right don't lie about it. They wear it on their sleeves. But the liberals, or I should say the Democratic Party, and everybody on the left, not everybody, but a lot of people on the left, they know that, look, oh my God, you guys have no other choice. You're going to have to go to us because we treat you better than the right. We treat you better. No, I'm happy in the middle. I'm happy in the middle. So like, that's why I actually am a fan of Tucker Carlson, and I'll get to that in a bit, because he talks some sense. I'm a fan of him, right? But it's so funny to me because look at what they did. They wanted to distract us. They knew that white outrage is louder, or white voices are louder than black voices in America, because the population of white people is higher. And Fox is the #1 news station in the country. So this happening to Fox, it was going to get so much more attention and so much more coverage. And it would drown out the black voices that have something to say about Don Lemon's exit. And so they could use these little pieces, put it all together for their hit piece against him, and say, well, he's an awful human being. We've been building this case for 20 years or however long he's been working here, and this is why we're firing him. And I call bullshit on that. That case that they were building, all the publicity that they had been releasing about him, if he was so bad, why didn't you fire him sooner? Why didn't you fire him in 2020 or when you even fired Chris Cuomo? Why didn't you fire him years ago if you claim that he has done all these terrible things? Then why not fire him earlier? Why did you wait? You waited, and literally they fired him simply because, this is what is alleged. The new guy at the CEO, the new CEO at CNN, didn't like him. Okay, I think Kempire, oh man, this video might be long, but let me see if I can play a little bit from what Kempire says.
The XS1 differentiates itself because
all right, so yeah, they think they're really slick. They think they're smart, but no, that's why I'm not going to spend this time talking about Tucker. It's about Dawn right now.
Going on. Here's the thing. Okay, before I get to that, because I do have thoughts on this, and this just has to do with having an HR background, but also just working in corporate America, Look, there are already people speculating, did CNN release this news today because of the Tucker Carlson situation? Honestly, it's an incredible coincidence, I think.
That's why it has
I
nothing to
don't
do with
think
each
that
other.
this was something that they decided, oh, we're going to release it now. No, I believe they've been building their case against Don Lemon for a while, making sure that they have done their due diligence over the last few months.
Over the last how many years, if you saw the articles that he's about to read, the articles that they were talking about him.
People saying that he is horrific behind the scenes.
Yeah, hold on, here we go.
Packed all the comments that people were saying, the back and forth that he had with his co-anchors of the new morning show that he was doing. So that's where it was really starting to snowball about Don Lemon. So I was not shocked that they let him go. Especially because while I was away, I saw the story where Variety came out and said that there were quite a few different people.
Okay, you know what? Let me find that Variety article. 1 second. So it's so interesting to me. I can understand how, now he's no longer a star of a show. And so the spotlight is no longer on him, right? But the difference now is that now that the spotlight's not on him, he has kind of equal standing with his co-host. And because he's a diva from the past, and used to having his own show and having the spotlight, I can see how he might have been acting up against his co-workers and they might have been complaining about him. And maybe that justifies why, they decided, look, he's too much of a diva. He's not cooperating with his team because he's not used to doing that. He's been the star of the show for so long, if I can find this hit piece. But they came out a few weeks ago, hit piece. They came out a few weeks ago, just going after, I think this is it. Yeah. CNN's Don Lemon had history. Okay, there we go. Did I already have it? I already had this article. That's funny. All right, let's look at this, right? Don Lemon's misogyny at CNN exposed malicious texts mocking female coworkers and diva-like behavior back in 2008. See, they are pulling receipts all the way back from 2008. Oh, this is going to read it for me better.
Don Lemon's misogyny at CNN exposed malicious texts mocking female coworkers and diva-like behavior. By Tatiana Siegel. Back in 2008, Don Lemon was co-anchoring CNN's Live from Weekday show with Kira Phillips, a gig that he landed after he arrived at the network 2 years prior from local news in Chicago. For months, tensions between the pair kept mounting. On more than one occasion, a Live from producer and a newsroom supervisor had to pull Lemon off the air during a commercial break because of the anchor's provocative antics. Not unlike his recent declaration that the 51-year-old Nikki Haley isn't a viable presidential candidate because she isn't in her prime. Amid the charged atmosphere, sources say Lemon disrespected colleague Nancy Grace on the air and Soledad O'Brien during an editorial meeting attended by roughly 30 staffers. But his antipathy toward Phillips was particularly concerning and had many members of the close-knit Atlanta news team on edge. While Phillips was on assignment in Iraq, a high-profile gig that Lemon coveted, he vented his disappointment at being passed over by tearing up pictures and notes on top of and inside Phillips' desk in the news pod they shared, according to two sources who worked there at the time. When she returned from Iraq, things only got weirder. One night while dining with members of the news team, she received the first of two threatening text messages from an unknown number on her flip phone that warned, "Now you've crossed the line and you're going to pay for it." Phillips was visibly rattled and quickly enlisted CNN's higher-ups to identify the sender. Remarkably, the texts were traced back to Lemon, according to those same sources. A human resources investigation was launched, and while the findings were never disclosed to the growing pool of staffers who were aware of the situation, Lemon was abruptly pulled from his co-anchor duties with Phillips and moved to the weekends. It was a demotion by any objective measure, and understood to be some kind of disciplinary action. It appears to be the last time he was paired with a female anchor until his most recent assignment on CNN This Morning with Dawn Lemon, Poppy Harlow, and Caitlin Collins. Phillips, who joined ABC as a Washington-based correspondent in 2018, declined comment.
So they're basically pulling receipts all the way back from 2008 and all sorts of dates that were like forever ago. And it's just so obvious to me that they really had, why didn't they fire him then? 2008? Some people were not even born yet. Some people that are watching this video were not even born yet in 2008. And you're pulling receipts from 2008? And we're supposed to believe that that's the reason why you kicked him off of CNN? It's so shady. And so I think there's a pattern here, and that's why I'm bringing this up, right? I think about the way that the Wendy Williams show was ended and terminated, and how those networks disrespected somebody that had been working there for 20 years. No, that's 20 years. I think she's been working there since like 2008, actually. So she's been working there so long. And it's like, you're wondering, do you guys have any respect for the people that work for you? Like, I would have said it's a black thing, right? But they did the same thing to Tucker Carlson, right? They did the same thing to Tucker Carlson. And to me, what it is the disrespect. These people, they make a lot of money. I think Tucker was making like $20 million a year, which is crazy. Don Lemon, I don't know how many millions he was making. Wendy Williams also, I don't know how much. These people are making a lot of money. So these people, like, it's so interesting because no matter how big your paycheck is, you're still, if you're an employee, you're still a slave. But this is one thing I'm going to say. You need to use it as leverage. Use it as leverage to own your own shit and run your own show. That's just, for me, that's just the big takeaway. Like this, I'm on this channel, I own this channel. Right now, I might not have a big audience, but I plan to blow up this channel. So guys, like, follow, subscribe for more content like this. I know I haven't posted in a while on this channel, but I legit have 8 channels now, and I'm posting on all of them, and I'm overwhelmed. I released a documentary, like 2 episodes of a docu-series on one of the channels called The University of Making Money. Go to my channel section here. You can see all my channels. I'm on Brand Video Pro. I post consistently at least like 3 times a week. I'm consistent there. I have a new one called Business in Nigeria where I interview as a podcast. I have so many, right? But point is, I work a lot. And sometimes I can't get to this channel, but hey, I know this channel has been starved of content. So I said, you know what, let me give you some content. But when it comes to Dawn, I'm so unimpressed with the way that these media companies are treating people that have worked for them for so long. I think there's a level of decency that you can have and respect for all the time that this person has devoted to building your platform, you know, because I can't imagine being so disrespectful. And, you know, fair enough, they might be divas, they might be all these things, but even if, I just think it just looks bad. With Wendy Williams, they threw away the Wendy Williams chair. They were just so like ratchet and disrespectful. They deleted all the, or they took down all the videos on her channel. They were just all the stuff that they did was just so ridiculous. And it's like, why is that necessary? Why is that necessary? Why can't you guys have respect for people that built your platform? You know? That's the side of capitalism that I just can't understand. But all I have to say to that is ownership is so important. You know, yes, okay, fair enough. You're making a crazy amount of money, $20 million a year that Tucker Carlson is making. That's insane money. But while you're making money like that, you have to leverage. And right now, he's been given the biggest opportunity, being kicked off right now. I think Don Lemon too. I think Don Lemon could just start his own YouTube channel, kind of like Megyn Kelly, and do his own thing and boost it up. You really don't need CNN and all these. They're gonna start putting clauses on CNN that you can't have your own YouTube channel once you leave. So that's one thing, right? So they need to just start their own podcast, YouTube channel, use all your money to big up a team or even your own media company and like expand. You really don't need these big publications anymore. And people don't really trust the big publications anymore. Like I watch more solo commentators than I watch like big media outlets, right? Because I feel like media outlets are so refined and they're so big, they have to stick to some sort of code of conduct. But I like commentators like myself, we can just speak it as we think it. And I think that authenticity is what people prefer. But of course, when you want straight facts, when you want straight, like legitimate facts, the undisputable facts, you're going to go to bigger news outlets, which is fine. But I just have to say with Dawn, I don't like the way they disrespected him and kicking him out. I do believe the misogyny. I don't support that. That was so stupid of him to say that. Also, just that's why at first I didn't even care when they told me that, because I just don't really, the way he's been acting, I don't really like care for the way he's been acting. But I do have to say the way these publications are kicking people out of their platforms is disrespectful. And Tucker, you know what? I know in this video I said I don't really want to talk about Tucker, but I'm actually a fan of his content. I think his content is hilarious. You don't have to agree with people. I probably disagree with, I would say, 75% of everything that he says. And I find even the 25% that I do agree with him on, I know he's disingenuous. For example, they kind of, Fox News kind of pretends like they're anti the Russia-Ukraine war, but that's really because these are white supremacists, right? Why would white people want white people to fight each other to their own destruction? That's really the reason. They see China as a bigger threat than Russia, and they think America should unify with Russia and push out the Chinese. They don't want China and Russia to unite. So, like, their agenda, they're pretending that they're anti-war. If a Republican president is pro-war, they're going to be pro-war. So they kind of cosplay for the times just to be in opposition to the opposite party. So that's why I know a lot of his stuff is disingenuous, but he's entertaining. And at the end of the day, it's entertainment for me. I can watch things and not take it personally. I actually watch a lot of right-wing content, but I've actually recently decided that I'm going to stop watching it. Some of it really angers me because I don't align with it. I'm way more liberal than that. So yeah, but in terms of politics, like, I'm liberal in terms of the way that I live my life or the way that I see the world, and I believe in inclusion, equity, all of those things. But when it comes to my politics in America, because different countries have different systems, but in the American system, I'm independent. I cannot, the Democratic Party to me are racists as well, and they perpetuate their racism and they hide it and they pretend like they care, but they really don't. They really don't put institutional support in the way that we want. But when it comes to Fox News, they don't even hide that they're white supremacists. At least you know what you're getting. Definitely outrageous and upsetting, right? There's a little bit more integrity in the Democratic Party, but when stuff hits the fan, you really can tell that these guys aren't for you. I want to show you the clip that the reason why they're claiming that Don Lemon got fired and CNN were pissed off with him. And this is where you can really see the racism in sort of these sort of liberal people. Don Lemon, CNN. If I could find it. CNN argument.
Made him actually get fired. Let's roll that clip.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was part of what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They
That's
were
a
not
fact.
secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to
And you know
happen
how they got it? They got their Second Amendment
Reconstruction.
rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role
absolutely,
in
they
that.
trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in
This
that.
is just historical fact.
It's
but Don,
not historical fact.
The part that I
Just
find,
because you say it's historical
the
fact,
part that I
it's not
find
historical fact.
insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have
The
gone
fact
through
that I
the
find
civil rights
insulting
revolution in
is
this
that
country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have
the
a different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without
shouldn't
me
express your
regarding
views,
you as a
but I
black
think it's
man,
insulting that
but
you're
me
sitting
regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's what I
sitting
think we should
here,
say.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
Whatever ethnicity I am,
about
I'll
what
tell
it's
you.
like to be black in
Whatever
America.
ethnicity I am, I'll tell
sorry.
you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
the content of the
If you're going
ideas.
to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay?
With-
But we
with-
appreciate you coming on.
With
Thank
due
you for
respect,
that.
Don, I look forward to
Thank you very
continuing
much.
that
I appreciate
conversation.
it. We'll
Thank
continue
you.
the conversation.
Thank you.
You know what? If that's how he left, he took one for the team, and I salute him because So there are a few things, right? CNN apparently got angry about the fact that he said whatever race you are, splaining. So he was basically saying, like, you know how you say mansplaining to me? He meant sort of you're Indian splaining to me. That's actually what he was trying to say, but it came out wrong. It sounded a little racist. And I have to admit, like, black people in America can be quite racist. That's another whole video that I can make. And so I understood why, like, CNN was upset about it. But CNN is always, I just feel like white people, and that sounds so bad. I don't mean white people in general, but I feel as though liberals or the leaders of the liberals, right? They always, and also like obviously the right wing as well, they always like dilute or ignore black voices. And that's really the issue here. So a few things, right? What Don Lemon is really trying to say, and I get it, he got all riled up, but what he's really trying to explain to this man here is that, look, you're telling me that black people got our freedoms? Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. Is it free for me to have, like, if I had a son and he's walking down the street, but he gets shot and harassed by the police, but if I adopted a white son, my white son would not have that experience? Or an Indian person, I don't know what the Indian experience is. Like, again, I don't know the Indian experience, so I'm not going to speak to it. This is what Dawn is saying. We know the black experience in America. Being a black person, so for you to tell me I have the same freedom, but if I walk into a restaurant, they don't let me sit inside the restaurant, but a white person comes into the restaurant and they're like, you can sit. Or even for example, you go into a restaurant and you have to sit in the back, or they try and hide you because you're black. Is that freedoms? This is what Dawn is talking about. So yes, like you could say legally, like it was positioned like black people got freedoms, but then we could talk about all the systematic racism that black people had to face in the housing market and zoning, in schools, and not having access to equal schools. So there's a systematic oppression of black people that this Indian man is negating. And so he's almost like, and so everything that he's saying is just so ridiculous to Dawn. But I guess on paper, it looked like we have the same freedoms. But I think maybe that's what he was trying to say, but he wasn't articulating himself properly. And that's where Dawn was like, no, you're not about to tell me that. And salute to him for dismissing him and telling him to get off. And Dawn is used to having his own show, so he can really do that. But now in this setting, this is not just his show. There's a woman sitting next to him. He's co-anchoring. Then he has producers in his ear because he doesn't own CNN. He doesn't own his platform, so they can tell him to shut up or whatever. Let my producers tell me to shut up, right? Let that happen. That's not going to happen. It's not happening. And that's the difference. So I think what Dawn needs to do, he has a big name, a big voice. He, just like Roland made his own YouTube channel, has 1 million followers right now. I think Dawn needs to do the same thing. Go create your own YouTube channel. Build out a media team. You have the resources. And if you watch this video, reach out to me. I can show you how to do it for cheap. Dawn, reach out to me. I can show you how to do it for cheap with a whole team, not this big CNN budget, but a big team, but you'll be able to execute CNN output. Maybe not CNN output is that scale, but for cheap, but the best bang for your buck. So reach out to me if you see this. But what I really have to say is that at the end of the day, if he went out like that, I respect it. I really do respect it. Because this Indian man does not know what he's talking about. He's just talking about what it looks like on paper. Oh, your experience. And a lot of times Indian Americans, they're given more proximity to whiteness. In fact, they're the most successful immigrants in America. Well, that's because of some of the systems of how they do, just as like Nigerian Americans are very successful here. Indian Americans, that some of the traditional values make them successful. So they have wealth, so that wealth gives you proximity to whiteness. And they've been allowed to navigate in America. Like non-black people in America have been given an opportunity not to surpass white people, but to navigate in a space that's still elevated and still privileged. And there was this sort of like creation of racism towards black people because you're not at the bottom, but you're still not white. So it's almost like I don't want to call it cooning, but this man right here is like, he's trying to please, you know, the white perspective, right? And just completely ignore some of the facts. On paper, it looks like that, but that's not accurate, right? And so him like sort of negating it and saying, he basically said, I don't see color. We should be able to have this debate without talking about race. It's like, I understand that perspective, but you're not going to be able to tell somebody about the freedoms when you have when you don't understand the nuances of their experience. You're not going to be able to tell someone that, look, your experience is XYZ when you don't know what it's like to walk into a restaurant and because you're a black man, they say, oh, there's no more seats. And this doesn't just happen in America. This happens around the world. And I've experienced the worst racism in Bangladesh and India, because I didn't leave the airport in India, so I'm not going to do that to India. But the worst racism, colorism in these countries, worse than you would experience in America or amongst any white person. Like, I remember my sister, they held her in the airport. One of them, they held her in the airport for 2 hours. They held the other one in the airport for, I think it was like 7 hours, just because they were black and they were traveling alone. And me, luckily, because I was coming in with an Arab, a brown person, and we flew in together, they didn't do that to me. So to me, like, there's so many layers to this, right? When I'm hearing this man talk about this stuff, right? And I'm not saying all Indians are racist. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything like that. Look, I'm a world traveler. I love going around the world. I love exploring. And I can notice when I'm being treated differently in certain places. And the way that we were treated in Bangladesh, I've never experienced that in my life. And I've never experienced racism. Well, I barely have ever experienced racism in my life. I can't say I've experienced racism in America. Not that it was visible to me, right? But I have, again, yeah, I have a different experience than most black people in America, right? But in Bangladesh, so to me, there's a level of just sort of dismissing the experience, but thinking that he has the credibility to speak because he's brown. So it's like, so white people will use that. Like, I saw he went on Megyn Kelly, and I didn't watch that. That stuff will irritate me because they love to bring like tokens or coons on their show to explain why, to sort of discredit the black liberals, right? They love to do that. They'll bring a black person to talk about something just to show how the liberals are idiots, basically. That's their whole agenda. So, of course, Megyn Kelly, she wants to perpetuate this movement that, oh my gosh, I'm colorblind. Why are black people racist? We haven't done anything, and we shouldn't have to pay for, and just ignore the racism as they perpetuate it. So she brought him on her show so they could continue to have that discussion. And I've decided that I'm no longer allowing myself to consume such content. I'm not watching that shit. I am not watching that shit. But what I will say is that I'm so unimpressed with him. But I'm go Don Lemon. If that's how CNN, if that's the reason that CNN kicked you out, good for you. Good for you. And only, but I'm going to ask black men, black men that experience racism, stop being misogynistic. That's really the nuance here. Stop being misogynistic because you're just as bad as a racist. Inequality is inequality, no matter how it shows, whether it's sexism, classism, whatever isms. Inequality is inequality. So black men, you guys, if anything, and that's why it's so funny to me, and that's why the Indian man or what I've experienced in Bangladesh is so offensive to me, because when you are already marginalized as a group, and then you perpetuate it on your own people, or not your own people, but you perpetuated white supremacy, and you do it worse. That's the part that's disgusting to me. That's what Dawn did with the other woman saying that she's not in her prime, being misogynistic. That's what this Indian man is doing, just negating and dismissing the black experience that he knows nothing of because he has probably darker skin. He's probably trying to lean on the fact that my skin is darker than yours, Dawn, but stop it. Get your information right. And yes, in India, the people were blacker than me, but they were still racist to me, right? So it's not about that, right? colorism is not just about skin color. It's also about hair texture. It's also about a lot of things. That's a whole other conversation. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. I know it's been a while since I posted, but I am back. But I'm always here, though. I'm posting consistently on all my other channels. So if you haven't seen me in a minute, go look for my other channels, and I am on there. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. And I'll see you next time. Peace.